If you want to grab our men's lifestyle supplement and male advantage ebook, all links are in the bio. Okay, so obviously thank you for coming back on. You're the second person to come on for a second time. I don't know if that counts for anything.
Got to celebrate all the wins.
Exactly.
Milestones.
The reason I've got you back on, number one, you're a friend and a decent guy. But number two is because I am inundated on a weekly basis with questions. People saying to me, should I join the army? Do you think joining the army is a good idea? Now, I personally think yes, but there's one obvious error there is that I've not been in the army. So I thought I'd get you back on so that you can actually give young lads out there that and women as well, I guess, if they're watching, but mainly young lads, obviously with it being first man, some advice and see if they, what they need to know, what you've learned, how it's benefited you in real life, etc. And I guess the obvious place to start would be, would you recommend the army? Plain and simple.
Yeah, so it's a really tricky question to answer because it's obviously the answer is so specific to the individual. So I think it might be better to kind of give an overview of what I got out of it personally. And then people can just relate to it depending on, where they've come from. So firstly, just to kind of pull apart the nuances of the question. So the question is, would I recommend joining the army? So I was in the Marines. So the Royal Marines is overseen by the Royal Navy technically, but it's in a weird sort of place in relation to all the services. It's kind of its own entity, but just overseen by the naval hierarchy right at the top of that chain. So everything I say, I think it's important to kind of just give this caveat that everything I say can only be, it's my experiences specifically of the Royal Marines, and every military is very different. Every, subdivision of every military service is very, very different depending on what job you're doing, whether you're an officer or not, and all of those those variables as well. So I'm just going to give my view specifically from the point of view of someone who is a Royal Marine. And I also just want to mention that, I think everybody typically makes the assumption, especially because of the events that have happened over the last couple of decades, that if you've been in the military in any way, shape or form during the last 20 years or so, and especially if you've been in like an infantry type regiment, then you've definitely been in combat, and I haven't. So I joined in 2012. Afghanistan was still kicking off, but was tailing off. And I'd been trying to join for a year and a half. And one of the big reasons was because all the stuff that was going on in the media about the terrible things that were happening out in the Middle East, and I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted a massive challenge, but I did want to be part of that as well. I wanted to do my bit. I was ready to kind of do something that I consider to be beyond myself. And so for me to join and to spend 4 years, I ended up just doing my minimum term. To do 4 years and to not be operationally deployed before I left was a massive kick in the teeth for me. Mm-hmm. Really, really difficult pill to swallow. So yeah, I just want to give those two caveats. The first one being my experience is all from the Royal Marines, and every military is different. And the second one, I was never operationally deployed during my time there. So yeah, would I recommend it? The short answer would be, I feel like the military is a really great experience for every young person, because whether you tick all the boxes that you want to tick before you join or not, you take so many valuable lessons away in other forms that I think most people are very unlikely to look back and regret it. So again, like drawing back on my own experience, even though I still look back and think, should I have had a crack at special forces? Should I have just stayed in a few more years and seen if there was something, so that I would have got that deployment in the bag and kind of felt like I'd actually done the job. I still never look back and think I regret joining. There were so many valuable lessons I learned. And I think the core lessons being the value of working for an organization that has a specific set of standards that you cannot drop below. That was probably the most important lesson, is that lesson of standards, upholding standards. Shared core values, like understanding how team cohesion really works, because you're all working in accordance with a shared set of values. It's another really important one. And then you're probably, unless you're absolutely useless or just don't want it, at some point you're going to get the opportunity to have really rigorous formal training in leadership, which again is just an essential life skill that you're going to rely on time and time again throughout the rest of your life. So I think those three things, like you can learn all those things in other areas, but you're probably not going to have them instilled within you to the same intensity as you would do within the military, and especially not if you're in an infantry regiment or the Paras or the Marines or something like more high end.
Do you think there's something you have beforehand going in? Do you think you've kind of got those traits and they bring them out of you, or do you think you can go from quite a lazy individual who's not focused, go into the military and come out as like a high performer? Because I believe somebody like me would be perfect for the military. Like when I was younger, I probably should have gone for it. It would have suited me really well. Me and you are very similar. We both get up early in the morning, we're motivated, we hit the gym, and I see these traits in people that are military based. Do you think that came from the training, or do you think they had them before and then they kind of blossomed?
I think what's going to happen is, the more strong character traits you've got, the better you're going to do.
Okay, yeah.
Everything that you've got going for you is going to flourish like more and thrive more and get built on in that environment. And the things that are kind of going against you, they probably will hold you back. Some of them might get fixed while you're there. But it's a bit like natural talent in any kind of given situation. I know of sports people that had all the talent and never made it, and were outperformed by people that didn't have anywhere near as much talent, but just had that work ethic. So, I think it definitely, there's a bit of both in there. You will learn skills that you didn't have before, and you might lose some bad habits that you had completely if you join. But you're definitely going to do better out of it. They will build on whatever good habits you have in place as well. So yes, it's an interesting one, mate. I mean, certainly, again, it really depends what service you're going into, because generally speaking, you won't get lads trying to join elite level services like Royal Marines, dare I say it again, Parachute Regiment, or even like the most sort of highly revered other infantry regiments in the army. Or as a pilot, maybe as another example, but tons of other examples. They're just a handful. You're unlikely to get lads, or sorry, ladies as well. You have to forgive me if I make.
I do the same, yeah. Especially with it being first man, it's like I've got lesbians messaging me now. They're sending me emails saying, "Oh, your content kind of helps me too. Can you give me some advice?" And I'm like, "Oh, I've got a responsibility now. It's a kind of..."
Yeah, you go, mate. Yeah, you got a new area to...
Exactly.
Well, when I was in the Marines, women couldn't join as well. So, I think of it very much from that male perspective. But yeah, you're very unlikely to get people joining the parts of the military that are revered for excellence, that don't already have a bit about them, a bit of ambition, to sort of strive beyond the average and stuff like that. So generally speaking, that's why I would say, I'm obviously very biased, but if someone's going to ask me, I'm thinking about joining the military, I want to be a soldier, where should I go? I would just say Royal Marines, because they just have the highest standards as far as I'm concerned. And you'll be surrounded by other people that aren't happy with just doing enough to get by, or just average. You're surrounded by other people that all wanted to be part of an organization that was known to be the best of the best. That's as Chad as it's.
No, I agree. I can really appreciate that on obviously a much, much more minute scale when I just go to the gym. I've said multiple times to people, I love walking into the gym because everybody in there is trying to become better. Like, nobody's going to the gym. Some people fuck around, but they're at least in the mindset of they're going there to become better, to improve in some way or another, or they've been through a breakup. Like, they're there for progression. And you can feel that energy. Like, I'm a big believer in kind of energies and whatever. And when you walk inside a gym, I feel that buzz straight away. Like, everybody in there is positive, trying to move forward in life, and you feed off it. And I imagine that's the kind of the bond that you get in the forces as well,
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's whatever I'm going to talk about today, a lot of it can be translated over to other parts of the services as well. It will just be slightly different, but that joint, and it goes into what I was saying at the start about shared values. You're in an organization with a set of shared values, and one of those values is high standards. That can only bring yourself up, because when we're always conforming to 3 sets of standards, we're conforming to our own personal standards, the standards of our environment, right? So like religion, the law, whatever is creating environment around us and the culture, and then the standards of our peers. And that's a massive one. And anyone who's in business understands that. Everybody knows the phrase something about like you are the sum total of the books you read and the people that you associate with, or whatever it is. But that's so true. When you surround yourself by like-minded people who are all ambitious and striving for excellence, it can only benefit you. And that's one of the reasons why I never really considered any other part of the military. I knew I just wanted to be in an organization where everybody was trying to get to achieve those high standards. So can't remember the original question, mate.
It doesn't matter. That's the point of a podcast. I've got a sheet of paper. That's how I get through it. I can't wait till one day it's like a proper Joe Rogan type setup. And like I said, at the start, I've got like 3 or 4 people behind the scenes, like operating everything. So this makes it exactly. Maybe you're here in person, it makes it so much easier, doesn't it? But, it's all about progression, as we said. How do you think that benefits you in the real world? Because obviously with what you're doing now, working with a lot of high performers in terms of the fitness side of things, how do you think that kind of translates over? Can you see similarities between yourself and these like multi-millionaires, and like the way that they operate and the way that you've been taught to operate? Because that's the main point that I always say to people when they are, should I join the military? I'm like, yeah, because everybody I know who's been in the military is a beast in real life. Like, they're dedicated to their gym. They're up at 5 a.m. They track their calories. Do you know what I mean? They just take themselves seriously. They show up on time. Like, they just have these core fundamentals that I also see in millionaires and billionaires. And so many people who have been in the military end up starting businesses after they've left, and they become successful. And I don't think that's by accident.
Yeah, I think the key word there for me is discipline. Like, everybody discipline as a dirty word. It's like the thing that's not to be enjoyed, and that's crazy. Jocko Willink's got a book called Discipline Equals Freedom, and even if you never read the book, like, the title just says it all. The title just literally says it all. Like, discipline is the key to achieving everything that you desire. We're only unhappy when there's a mismatch between our reality and our desired outcomes. And the difference, this is why I've got this sort of 4-step framework for coaching, which is vision, standards, habits, and review. And it's always the standards. Putting our standards up is how to close the gap between that mismatch, and you can relate it to anything. And so I think what happens is, in the military, people learn to be disciplined, but then they build the association between discipline and positive outcome, so that you don't see it as a dirty word anymore. You don't see it as something that you just kind of have to do in order to, get things that You want, like, it's that, like I say, that positive association form. So you recognize the value of applying it to everything else. And yeah, it doesn't always stick with everybody. Again, like we're saying, you're conforming to the standards of your environment and your peers. So a lot of the time when people leave the military, they did okay while they were in there, but then they go back to like maybe where they came from, like maybe they come from a shitty area where people, like, all their mates are in and out of prison or something like that. You know, a couple of years later, they're on the street or they're in prison themselves or whatever. Yeah, it does come down to discipline. And I think people who have strived to achieve excellence their whole lives, like people who've been really career driven, tend to have those same traits. They've learned that same positive association where, oh, if I get up early every day, if I come to work an hour before everyone else every day, I can get an hour more work done, and I'm getting promoted before my peers. And oh, now I'm at director level, and I'm like, that happened 5 years quicker than the average person at this company.
Yeah.
And you learn that positive association, but the difference is you don't learn the team cohesion. You don't learn the value of having the strongest social support network possible around you. Because actually, as men, one thing that we're really, really guilty of is trying to do everything by ourselves. And that's not resilience. Like, that's not true resilience. Nobody is truly resilient on their own. You're as resilient as you are personally and as the support network that you have around you. And as men, you know, we're just so shit at ever asking for help. You know, even if you have been lost for hours, you'll still try to find out before you ask someone else for directions.
Yeah.
You know, whatever. And just even telling your good friends that actually, like, you're not really okay at the moment is such a difficult thing to do sometimes. But you know, when you're in something like the core, you start to learn that. You start to realize, because you've all been pushed to your absolute limits, and you've seen guys, like really tough, robust guys, at breaking point. You realize that we all have vulnerabilities, and that's not a big deal. It's how you can build on it from there, and it's how you can use the support around you to help that happen. And so I think, you know, you do get really ambitious people outside of the military who've never had any military experience, and you do get high performers. And I think they do have some of the same skill sets, but they've learned to do it on their own. And in some ways that can end up going against them, because you instill this belief that you can do everything by yourself. And then when you can't, you have a massive complex about reaching out to somebody for help. Whereas in the military, you learn you learn firsthand the value of strength in numbers, and you learn to rely on other people and use the other people around you a bit more, which in life, for me, that's probably one of the most helpful skills. It's just being able to reach out to people and say, mate, do you know what? I don't have a fucking clue what I'm doing at the moment. I'm actually, my head's in a shit state this week. You know, what do you reckon?
No, I agree. That's one thing I struggle with. You're just describing me there. I don't trust people to get it done as well as I could, so I'd rather sacrifice the time and do it myself and make sure it's done right. But then, like we were saying before we went live, you're just looking, you're like, I've done one thing today. You know, because I've had to go back and catch up on this one thing and fix it, rather than outsourcing it to like 4 or 5 different people. Yeah, it costs you a little bit financially, but then you save like 2 weeks of time. And it's just having that trust, I think, as well, to say, okay, I'm gonna include others. And I think that's why I'm really upset that I didn't join the military. I think I would have picked up some really good skills early on. I think I could have done with that. But yeah, the other question people ask me is obviously the dangers. It's impossible to talk about the military without talking about you could get shot in the face, right? This is what people say. It was interesting when you said earlier about you didn't get deployed, and you were gutted about that. You actually wanted to get deployed. And I think to the average person on the street, to an outsider, they would assume the dream scenario is to join the military, get all the training, go on the cool holidays, if you would, and then kind of just, do your time and go without ever having to get into combat. But it's interesting to see that your mindset is the complete opposite, where you would have rather have got deployed.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things I can say about that. The first one is, probably the average person, um, let's put it this way, most people who never become really successful at work and wealthy probably want to be really wealthy without doing any of the work, right? And if you can liken joining something like the military, or let's be really specific, joining the Royal Marines to be a commando, to earn your green lid, your commando dagger, and to do all the training, to do like some of the world's longest, hardest, most miserable basic training just to get in, and then to do another 4 years of training and to never do your job, is a little bit like going to medical school to be a surgeon and never actually performing surgery on anybody. Being in, just going from one classroom to the next, one seminar to the next, maybe practicing on like a dead person already, or like a dummy or something like that, doing simulations, but never actually getting to operate and then ending your career there.
It makes sense, yeah.
It definitely is a mentality thing. Like if anyone is joining the Royal Marines who actually doesn't want to go and be a soldier, then
It's dangerous.
Definitely joining the wrong service. Like you need to turn around and go and visit the, RAF recruiting office or whatever. And that's not a disrespect to the RAF. Because
no, I understand. Yeah,
it is a joke, but like you're just in the wrong place. If you've got the mentality where you want to join the military and not go to war, like you're in the wrong place. And it's not about wanting to like kill people and get on the back and stuff like that. It's literally, my views about it have changed dramatically as well. Since I was in, I don't have exactly the same views that I have about necessarily going into combat and stuff like that as I had then. But at the time, I honestly believed that, and not to say that I don't believe this now, but my 100% belief at the time was that, really good things were happening in places like Afghanistan as a result of Western military presence, and I wanted to be a part of that. It wasn't that I wanted somebody to give me a gun and tell me I could legitimately go and murder somebody. It was because I felt like there was a job that needed to be done that was going to make the world a better place, and I wanted to be part of that. And that it was the job. It wasn't that I specifically wanted to go to war. It was just that I wanted to do my job. I would train to do that job, and that was it. So, yeah, and so I think that's probably the most important point. Sorry to waffle on.
No, it's really interesting
question, but you have to be really crystal clear about what it is you actually want to get out of it. And with that clarity also has to come an acceptance that it might not happen, because you're not in charge of very much once you sign on the dotted line and go into the services. You're now government property, essentially. You have to work every weekend for the rest of your life. If they tell you have to go to war for six months. If they tell you that you have to, there are no choices left about a lot of the stuff that you have total freedom over in civilian street. And that is the ultimate kind of sacrifice that you make underneath actually going away and losing your life, right? So you have to be really clear about that, and that was actually my downfall in some ways. I had my expectations of what I wanted to get out of it, which were reinforced by all the kind of sugar-coated stuff that they give you during the recruitment process. Yeah, you'll travel the world. You'll definitely be operationally deployed. Like you'll get loads of money for education. You'll be doing, underwater knife diving courses every,
That's amazing. Yeah.
yeah, every couple of weeks and all this kind of stuff. And I built up these expectations of what I was going to get, and I got like half of it, and that other half was just a constant source of disappointment for me. And if I could go back in that with the mindset that I've got now, I would have enjoyed my time in a lot more. And I realized that, I had expectations about it that weren't met, and that tarnished it massively for me. So that's a big point for people to take home. A lot of areas of the military you'll join and you'll know what kind of job you're going to do. again, one of the differences with the Marines is that you join as a commando. You go to commando training center. Everybody does exact same training, and then it's only after you pass out as a commando and go to a unit as what they call general duties rifleman that you then will specialize in a job. And everybody has their ideas before they join of what job they're going to do, until you realize that's not necessarily up to you. You know, someone tells you, oh, by the way, there's a 2-year waiting list for that job that you want to do, and we're volunteering you to go and be a chef because no one wants to do that job and we're short of blokes. So now you're going to go be a chef or a driver or, you know, a communication signaller for the next 2 years, whatever. So yeah,
it's a bit difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, understanding and acceptance are the key words there. Understand the reasons why you're going in and accept that anything could happen.
You could become a chef. Imagine going into the military being all hyped up about, okay, you know, I've watched the films, and then you end up being a chef. You'd be like, what? I might as well have just been a chef outside of a war zone in Mayfair or something for like 3 times the money.
Exactly, and ironically, that's probably more likely to happen in the Marines than anywhere else, because, like I say, you only get specialised once you're in. Whereas if you join the army, you know, you'll join as a specific job. Like you'll go in to be a driver in the army, as an example, or a chef even, or you know, or a signaller or an engineer or whatever. You know, and all those jobs exist within the Marines because they're a self-sufficient entity, but you just don't always have choice over which one's going to be. And it's essentially what happened to me. You know, I ended up picking the best option that was available to me, which was an electronic warfare branch. So in essence, what that meant was that in the end, I was still going out on the ground in green role in combats, you know, with a rifle and all the rest of it, but I was carrying technical equipment, radios, laptops, antennas, and my job was to basically like set up a listening post and do reconnaissance, so signals reconnaissance on enemy targets, obviously in training because I wasn't deployed. You know, any dreams that I had of going into combat and doing a kind of Rambo-esque mission with a dagger in my mouth and a rifle on fully automatic dissipated within the first 2 years of being in, because I was now in a branch that was unlikely to ever be deployed in that kind of role, you know.
Interesting. Do you think games like Call of Duty are messing up everybody's kind of vision of what the army will be, what the military will be like? Do you think people are looking at it and thinking, "Oh, it's going to be great. I'm going to just be scoping people's foreheads off," and you're like, "It's completely like it's not going to be like this at all. You cannot reset. You cannot self-revive on the floor." Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not going to happen.
I mean, you know, all the movies are great, but Hollywood does a fantastic job of obviously glorifying all of the cool bits and leaving out all the shit that no one cares about. You know, I mean, if you turned my career into a movie, no one would watch it. Let's just put it that way.
I was actually gonna offer you a part in, you know, the Iranian siege, the Iranian embassy siege, a couple years ago, in London. I was actually, for the stream platform, going to make that into a film. I wondered if you wanted to be in it, because obviously we need people who know how to move, how to operate properly. So I think it'd be kind of cool.
Mate, it'd be the closest opportunity I get to reliving my being Rambo.
You could just say, "Oh, this was real life. This is real footage."
yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's it. So that's it, mate. And this, you know, again, like I'll give you another example. I had a really good mate who was in the call with me, who was one of the fittest lads that I knew, absolutely amazing runner. And his dream was to go special forces. And before you even get to selection, you have to go and do what's called briefing course, where you basically just get beasted. You have to do a load of navigation and like self-navigation over the hills with time restrictions and stuff like that. And he absolutely smashed through his briefing course. You know, special forces were like, yeah, brilliant, can't wait to get you on selection, like start as soon as you can. And the first part of selection is probably the most physically demanding. It's the hills phase, where you're just doing a lot of the same thing I just mentioned, self-navigating over mountainous terrain, you know, time restrictions on everything. And if you can pass that, there's a good chance that you'll finish the rest of selection. But the next stage is going to the jungle. And my friend, who'd absolutely smashed the hills phase, went to the jungle phase and ended up overheating, like essentially like boiling his internal organs. Ended up in hospital there, got signed off of being able to try special forces selection again for the next year. So I had to come back to his unit, our unit, back to day-to-day work, wait for 12 months before he could have another go. Went off again, did the hills phase again. Bear in mind, this is one of the most physically demanding things that you're ever going to put yourself through, all right? So for the second time after that years in the Marines already. Gets to the jungle, exactly the same thing happened. Ended up in the same bed of the same hospital.
That was telling him something, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he was thinking, okay, exactly. He was thinking, right, maybe this is not necessarily meant to be. I've got to consider my options. And funnily enough, he fired off an email. He noticed that there was a junior chef position available for a really highly esteemed restaurant in the southwest. It was a Michelin star pub, and he sent off this email. Didn't think anything of it. He had to wait another 6 months again before he could go on the next selection, and that would be the third and final attempts that you would have. And then if you failed that, then that was it.
Yeah.
So he's getting ready to go, and anyway, cut a long story short, he gets a call from this Michelin star pub. They said, "Oh yeah, we've just seen that you were applying for this like apprenticeship type position they had available," and they said, "Oh, we'd be interested in speaking to you more. Like, are you interested?" And he said, "Yeah, I would be, but I'm still in the military, and basically," he explained the situation, said, I'm applying for special forces, but I don't know how it's going to go." So I said, "Okay, yeah, we'll just do that, and then just get back to us, just let us know how you get on." So in the end, goes off. He managed. I think they let him skip the hills phase this time, because he already done it twice. He went straight to the jungle, exactly the same thing again.
Oh my God.
Straight back to hospital. So, that's like about a 3-year journey of preparation and going through selection and everything that's just not paid off. Like, he's not going to secure his dream ever of special forces, which was undoubtedly the reason that he probably joined the Corps first.
3 times though, just like cooking your organs. You could have been cooking for the Michelin star.
yeah, I know a lot of my insides.
Was that his experience? He wrote that down the CV. I've been cooking my insides for 3 years.
Luckily they took him on. He ended up getting a junior chef position in this amazing restaurant.
It's amazing, yeah.
We're happy to just teach him everything. He had no qualifications, and that, and so there's a couple of important lessons here, which is, one, again, you just never know how it's going to go, and you have to be fully accepting of that. But 2, that pub, that restaurant at that level probably wouldn't have taken on anyone else who had no experience, no qualifications in cooking. But he turned up on time for his interview, in a suit, fully prepared to do whatever was asked of him. They put him through like a 12 or 13-hour day in the restaurant, just helping out with all the people and stuff like that. And in the end, they were like, "Yeah, mate, you were amazing. Never seen an applicant put in that kind of, graft on an interview with us and stuff. We'd be happy to just take you on."
It's the same in finance. When I was in finance, I was sat next to a lot of the guys that were hiring, like the CEOs and the managers, etc. And every time there was somebody, they'd go through and they go, no. Oh, this guy's got military background, and they'd put it to the side, and that was like, I don't care what his experience is or her experience is, we're definitely going to consider this person. And it was just military, right, done. Yeah, you're definitely going to, I have 0 experience, but you've been in the military. You can transfer those skills into what we're doing here, and it's definitely a mindset thing. It's like, oh, this person's guaranteed to work hard, they're going to be focused, they're going to be disciplined, they're going to be able to learn quickly, they can handle pressure. It's those sort of fundamentals where they're like, yeah, tick 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 tick, we'll give you an interview. But I'm conscious about keeping this to like the 30-minute kind of time just for engagement purposes. So my final kind of question would be, what sort of advice would you give to people who have watched this now and they are convinced they want to go into the military? What would you say in terms of preparation? Like, how can they get ready so that they can be at their best and they're not shocked when they arrive?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And again, it definitely depends where you're going, obviously, but I'll just make it as directly relevant to my own. Also, we assume that most people who are asking you are probably thinking about joining an infantry regiment of some kind. The best things that you can do is, number one, just talk to as many people as you can who've got some experience of it. And what I mean by that is, like, don't speak to someone who's been a submariner about their experience of the military if you're thinking of joining like the rifles. There's no point. They won't really know anything about it. They might have worked with somebody, but just find out as much as you can. And just try to get a feel for whether you think it's really right for you. Write down a list of your core values. This is actually one of the questions that I ask all my clients, about their careers when they're, because I deal with very busy professionals that are usually suffering from a little bit of stress and want to improve their health. And quite often when we're talking about work and their relationship with work and their job, I ask them, how much of what you do is aligned with your core values? And they've often never thought about it. So it's really important to understand what are your core values before you even think about what you're going on to do from there. And so when you're clear about what your kind of core values are, like what you actually want to get out of life, what's important to you, what's important, what are the standards for like your health and your living and your family life and stuff like that. Then, like I say, just get as much information as you can. Go to the recruitment office, but don't take everything that they say without a massive pinch of salt, because they're trying to pull you in. And speak to as much people as you can with real world experience related to where you want to go. And then in terms of actual preparation, the mental preparation is the key thing beyond the physical. Get out there and just beast yourself as hard as you possibly can when it comes to fitness. Don't just do the same sort of fitness that everyone else has done. Make it uncomfortable. Go out running in the rain. Go out running in the night. Go and do like a wild camp somewhere, just to give yourself some exposure of being completely alone in the dark. Just do things that make it a little bit less comfortable, because there's clean pain and there's dirty pain. I got this from another podcast, which is a really interesting point. Clean pain's the sort of pain that athletes go through on their hardest training session, and dirty pain's the sort of pain that you're going to get put through when you join the Royal Marines or the Paras or like wherever else where you're just uncomfortable, like brutally uncomfortable. So try and replicate a bit of that.
No, I can understand that. Again, on a much smaller scale, when I used to do construction and we'd be doing the concrete run, and it would be like 1 hour of back and forth, heavy wheelbarrows, like up the ramp, over the other side, and it was painful. You were aching. And it would either be like 35-degree heat or pissing hard with rain and your hands were cold, and obviously the wheelbarrow itself is like metal or whatever, and that was freezing. Like that, maybe the rubbers had come off the handles. Oh, we haven't got any gloves today. It's just little things like that where you just go, oh, what am I doing here? But you've got to fight through it, and that obviously is a much smaller scale, but I know exactly what you're talking about. The way I got through it is it's really weird, but I used to tell myself that I loved the pain. And I kind of went into this like demonic state where it was like, I actually enjoy hurting. I enjoy let's see how far you can push me, because I guarantee I will beat you. It was almost like an arm wrestle between me and pain. And that's the only way I got through it. Otherwise I would have quit that day.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. That's what I call type 2 fun.
Type 2 fun.
Be a little part of you that actually enjoys the suffering.
Yeah.
That relishes the challenge of being pushed to a limit and facing it head on. And it's not enjoyable in the more traditional sense of it's just fun to do, but it's enjoyable that you're getting something out of it. You're facing that challenge, and you're doing your bit to overcome it. You're using your inner strength to overcome it.
That's the name of your book, Type 2 Fun. No, I'm telling you, that would be fantastic. That would really catch on, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Write that down. Type 2 Fun.
I like that. But there's a really important point that you mentioned earlier as well. I can't remember specifically what it was, but it was making me think about. It was along the lines of the finance, where people sort of putting the CVs to one side of people that they know have had that military experience, and that's one of the reasons why I'm putting together a package now for teams to take into the corporate world and deliver to teams, because you can learn these things. You can understand the principles of how that team cohesion works. And you hit the nail on the head earlier, actually, when you're talking about trust. It is about trust. That's what is lacking in the corporate environment quite often, is that implicit, unquestionable level of trust between you and your colleagues. But there are ways of building that, or certainly like getting further along the way to that than most sort of corporate environments are already. So yeah, I can't remember exactly the point I was going to make, but
I like what you're saying there, because all the finance companies I work with that's infighting, I can really relate to it. Like, everybody pretends to be your friend, but underground they're trying to get rid of you, or they want the job that you've got, or they want, oh, how much do you get paid? Like, on a night out, I got asked that so much. How much do you get paid? I don't know why he's paying you that much. And you're like, what? This isn't going to help the team at all, is it? And everyone's talking about everyone behind their back, and then you got office romances, and I just think it would help so much if everybody just said, let's move all these kind of legs in the same direction. That's one thing that used to really annoy me. It's the same in sports teams I played in as well. The best ones that have succeeded, we've played as a team, no egos. But all the ones where we've not done that well, or I could have had a better season, is where you start well, you start playing well, and then people stop passing you the ball. And that's one thing I was always devastated about, is that why didn't I just do boxing? Because it's a solo sport. I wouldn't have had to have relied on anybody else. But by playing football, people just went, you're playing well, the scout's watching you, I'm not going to pass you the ball anymore. And I just wouldn't touch the ball for like 45 minutes. And it's really frustrating. So I can really relate to what you're saying there.
And this is the reason why sports teams and businesses go and do like the team building workshops and stuff with military organizations. And a lot of the time they'll send sports teams to do the fitness at military organizations, but they're kind of missing a trick there, because they're kind of all over the fitness. It's the team cohesion that's missing. And again, like going back to business, people in business understand the value of military experience. You think about the whole structure of business is built around military organization. You think about how much terminology there is within business, like campaigns, every C-suite is an officer, stuff like that. The Art of War by Sun Tzu. That's like one of the only, probably the only book that old, all about the strategies of war, that's required reading for some like high-level business schools, and that just about every like finance exec has probably at least glossed through at some point, and a lot of businesses are most of the way there. It's that team cohesion element that is really hard to develop within business environment, and that you just can't learn to the same extent anywhere else than in the military. So for that reason alone, mate, you're probably right. The answer to your very first question probably is yes, just based on that. Would I recommend joining the military? To learn the value of team cohesion and personal leadership? Yeah, you'll develop that in just about every military service. So if you're young and you're not too worried about what else you got on, you might as well just go for it.
That's a good note to end on, I think. Do you want to plug your socials or anywhere else, anything else that you're working on?
Yeah, so I'm predominantly on LinkedIn. Anybody can DM me there. I work predominantly with busy execs, like I say, looking at personal leadership, looking at managing stress better, and all the while just improving health and fitness. I'm also on YouTube. You can just Google Theseus Body and Mind on YouTube, Google, or any platform, and you'll find me. And I've got the podcast, which is the Body and Mind broadcast. If people want to go there and check out my discussions with other people there as well.
If you want to grab our men's lifestyle supplement and male advantage ebook, all links are in the bio.